YouTube, Pericles here, and what you're looking at is the toughest grind I've ever done, basically. This is the IS-6, and it cost me 700,000 experience to unlock. Many of you will recall around about this time last year, the IS-6 mission went ahead, where you had to grind out 100,000 experience for each of the 7 nations in the game, using only Tier 6 vehicles. Many people figured this essentially turned playing World of Tanks into a full-time job in itself, and what made the whole thing even sweeter was the fact that the Japanese were counted even though that nation was only released halfway through the event, so you had half the time to grind out 100,000 experience on the Cheeto. Not to mention having to grind out all the preceding 5 tiers to get to the Cheeto in the first place. It was a challenge, but it had a massive sense of accomplishment if you actually achieved it and got the tank, and you feel like less of a whore for driving it through earning it rather than just buying it. Not long after, they followed it up with an event for the KV-220, which I also completed, and then the Super Pershing, which is the only reason this thing is in my garage. I wouldn't buy a Super Pershing, but hell, if they're going to give it away for free, I'll take it. So this year they're doing the same thing with the WZ-111, the Chinese Tier 8 rare premium tank previously available only on the Chinese server. And the conditions this time are a little bit gentler. Instead of getting 100,000 experience at only a Tier 6 vehicle, it's available to any vehicle Tier 6 and higher, and the conditions are 150,000 damage per nation, plus 150 kills. Definitely a lot more achievable and far less reliant on your teams being competent and winning games for you. And as an added easing tool, you're allowed to buy off tokens for nations that you don't particularly feel like grinding, therefore making it basically a discounted tank that you wouldn't normally otherwise get. And so, because it was so much fun last time, I decided I'd give it another crack, and this time I'll be detailing my progress and chucking it up on YouTube for any sad soul that wants to watch. With the IS-6 mission, the metric was experience, so it made a lot of sense to grind a wide variety of nations and pick up the daily doubles, just so you can grind through more efficiently. But as the current mission is based on damage dealt and kills, things that aren't affected at all by dailies or any such thing, winning, losing, regardless, and also given the fact that you can buy off nations that you don't particularly want to grind, or if you don't quite make it in time, I'm finding that it's a lot more sensible to focus on a particular nation or a couple of nations at a time, just to knock those out, secure them, because there's no point getting halfway through all 7 nations and having to buy all 7 tokens for a full price vehicle, when instead you can focus on the ones that you can do best in, then try and grab as many as you can before the time elapses and just pay off the last remainders. In light of that, I've decided to primarily focus on my German vehicles, especially the WZ-111, my primary damage dealer, the absolute monstrous beast. An average of about 1,050 damage with every pull of the trigger, it quickly mounts up. It's got low DPM, but just the damage per shot, and taking shots when you can, just keeping the gun firing, it just chews through enemy tanks with reckless abandon. However, with the damage dealing ability, it doesn't quite have the ability to secure loose kills the way that other vehicles may, so I've also decided to back it up with, of course, the E50, which I decided to take advantage of grinding out the final L100 gun on it that I'd previously ignored because it's essentially worthless, but figured now's as good a time as any to elite the vehicle. Besides which, it's just a damn fun tank to play. However, for ultimate kill-stealing benefits, I've decided to go with my Tier 7s. Having recently unlocked Brothers-in-Arms on the Tiger, I've got the reload down to a glorious 5.3 seconds, just the ability to fire so quickly allows you to pick off low health targets. And likewise, a last hurrah for the E25 before they decide to remove it from the gift shop. So there's a lot of these little bugs about, and they are absolute bosses at securing loose kills. Other than Z-Germans, I've also been playing the Yanks, essentially to grind out my Pershing and T-71 to pick up discounted T-69 and Patton medium tanks with the upcoming special, and made a little bit of a start with the Soviets. So, has it worked? Yes and no. I've managed to knock out the damage total for the Germans, and made some reasonable progress with the Americans and Soviets, but I'm still finding myself 32 kills short for the Germans, and quite a long ways to go for the others. There's been several spanners to the plans here. My first day off work, during the grind, I found that the game no longer worked for me. Every time I would attempt to synchronize Garage loading in, the entire game would crash to desktop, requiring that I go through the entire process of uninstalling and reinstalling the entire 8 gig game all over again. Following that, the days off that I anticipated I'd be able to play, I ended up getting called in to work to cover for sick people within my department, and people pinched from my department to work in others, so I haven't really had as much time as I would like to play through. But all in all, it's been going reasonably well. It's a lot less stressful a grind than it was last year, although it is still getting a bit much for some of the
Fuck
players.
this shit, I'm out. Alright then. I don't know what the fuck just happened, but I don't really care. I'ma get the fuck up out of here. Fuck this shit, I'm out.
The second week of the mission is Christmas week, so there isn't really a shit show of getting much gameplay done then. What with the frenzied lead up to it, and then the festivities themselves, and the long stinking hot summer days when you don't really want to be cooped up in a room, hunched over a screen with all the curtains shut so you can damn well see it. So I'm not expecting much progress. However, the weeks that follow that, I should get a lot more in, make a lot better performance, much better go of it. And the Aggie 100 has definitely lived up to its potential. This thing has chowed down on a hearty amount of HP. However, as I lack any tier 10 Soviet or American tanks, or really anything other than Germans, it's going to be a bit tougher grinding through them with no obvious damage dealers. I mean, I've got the STI and the IS-8 to plough through on the Soviets, and the M103 decent enough for the Yanks, but still, yeah, it's going to be a bit more of a struggle, I reckon. I guess I'll just have to rely on Russian bias and probably cheat by playing the KV2. So enough of me dribbling on, might as well kick off a couple of gameplay highlights from my week.
Long live the king.
This match was one of the unexpected highlights of my week. I'd been platooning regularly with my mate Infector, pairing his Death Star up with my Jagernaut, and rolling dual E25s for maximum trollage, and the odd tier 9 game for kicks. When he informed me that although he was looking forward to picking up the E75, he wasn't enjoying his Tiger 2, so I had to convince him that he's wrong. So we dropped into the Tiger 2s and took them for a spin. Now, I quite enjoy the Tiger 2. It's not the greatest vehicle at tier 8, but it's a more than adequate all-rounder. It's just such a reliable tank that allows you to perform regardless of the situation, regardless of the tiering. With that accurate gun, with great penetration, with the armor that you can put to work in pretty much all situations, and an okay speed. It's not particularly slow, not particularly fast. I never really feel like I'm out of options with this thing. There's always something that I can do for the team. And I know it sounds like I'm damning it with faint praise, but I'm really not. This is a backbone tank. It's a workhorse. It's reliable, it won't let you down, it gives you the space to go to work. Now, RNGesus smiled on Infector and myself, giving us a glorious Tier 8 match with a map that focuses most of the action on an urban centre, which is just mana from heaven for these things. When it comes to side scraping, only really the KV Fortress outshines the Tiger 2 at Tier 8, and the fact that this tank is a lot more mobile than that KV4 just allows it to get to the adequate positions a lot quicker. So that's exactly what we're doing. The job of the top tier heavy is to spearhead the attack, hold the enemy's attention, and just slap them around while the rest of your team has the strategic space to go to work. And it's at this point where I get unexpectedly penetrated by a Jagdpanzer IV that I remember that I'm not driving the E75. I'd spent the first 2 minutes of the match having a yarn on TeamSpeak about the E75 and suffered a near fatal brain fart as a result. So what I need to do is glue the front of my tank to this church up here to stop my lower glacis from getting penetrated by all and sundry. This is Heavy Tank 101. You anchor the attack and give the enemy something to waste shells firing at. This is something the Tiger 2 excels at. The gun's got a good enough rate of fire that it's not easy for the enemy to simply overwhelm you with numbers, and the armor layout is good enough that you can effectively use it to bounce shots between reloads. Most gratifying of all is the sheer number of shots that Borsig is wasting at me, just bouncing off. Even the 215 mils of pen that the 15cm gun it has could deal with the armor if he just takes the time to aim, but he's not. One of the hidden features of the Tiger 2 is the astral projection ability. That wasn't just a replay bug, it's something that you unlock when you get 6th Sense on your commander of your Tiger 2, the ability to eject your spirit from the tank and view the battlefield from a remote location. And another bounce. This Rheinmetall is not having a good day. Which coincidentally means it's a good day for me. Yep, when you get a tier 8 match, you're the meanest kid in the playground, just taking everybody's lunch money. Now, with Infector holding the west side of the church, and with the tank destroyers on the O-line pushed back, it's definitely time to get a bit more aggressive, put some pressure on these central holdouts. The way our E25 is positioned, this Tiger 2 here has to fight effectively on 2 fronts, so no matter what happens he's going to be exposing weak spots to at least one of us, so it's all over Rover for that fella. And once the notorious RHM is dealt with, it'll give us the opportunity to tighten the noose around the last few remaining enemy vehicles in the town here. You can see in chat here the enemy team is not too happy about the second Tiger 2 going to the Valley of Irrelevance to get bogged down aimlessly. This is where the fight is, this is where he was needed, and as you can see, it's a great opportunity to just clean up if you have the benefit of hit points and firepower concentrated in the city. We own the city, we outnumber them 12-5, and they don't have a lot of room to maneuver. At this point of the match, it's just a race against your own team to see how much HP you can squeeze out of the last remaining enemy victims. As the Hellcat's nearly dead and there's still some good eating left on the T-28, and the fact that most of my allies are in the middle of the town, and that's where the T-28's best armor and gun are going to be pointing, the best idea is to press down this road, get his soft juicy flank to pump some shots into, and just clean up.
Hail to the king, baby.
And now it's just the unwise Tiger 2 and the enemy team getting killed in the Valley of Irrelevance. So we'll close it here. So this proved to be a flawless game, netting me 8,000 WN8, first class mastery, steel wall, high caliber, and a bunch of ribbons. It wasn't exactly very challenging, it was just the perfect environment for the Tiger 2 to do its thing. 3,738 damage dealt, 3,800 blocked, only 300 assistance damage, but I managed to lock about 5 enemies in place. And although he had a fairly dry game damage-wise, Infector tanked like an absolute boss. He probably would have picked up a steel wall medal if the Borsig hadn't fed it to me. Anyway, that's the first week done and dusted. Not the most active, but things should be ramping up rather quickly. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll catch you later.